In my opinion, advanced manufacturing is twofold. So there's obviously a role for technology. We're well embedded into 4.0 manufacturing capabilities, but I think it speaks to a certain level of business maturity. So having the technology and equipment is one thing, but being able to actually use it to at its full capacity, to create value for a customer, stretch the limits of design and sustainability and efficiency is something completely different.
This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Rushan Senanayak.
Welcome everyone. It's great to be back for another episode of Inspiring Design, and this episode marks the finale of Season 4, wrapping up a very focused attention on so many different aspects of advanced manufacturing. But we've saved the best for last. Sitting in with me is Dr. Kylie Warren from Elexon Electronics. To put it simply, Dr. Kylie has a passion for design, process, and problem solving. Following her high-achieving education, coupled with her initial experience in biological sciences, Kylie now plays a crucial role and significant one in advanced manufacturing. Her knowledge and skills helps drive the development and implementation of quality and environmental management systems in a wide range of industries, including biotech, cosmetics, veterinary, therapeutic, medical devices, and most recently, electronics. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. All right, Kylie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show. Can we, as usual, start off with a little bit of background? What's your story? How did you get here to do what you do?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me on the podcast.
Pleasure.
My name's Kylie Warren. I live here in Brisbane with my partner, 2 young children. And I'm the quality manager at Elexon Electronics. So when I describe my background, I always like to start with the fact that I'm a product of Western Sydney. I was born in Bankstown, grew up in Penrith, and I think it's a contributing factor to my successful career and role in advanced manufacturing. I'm sure many people...
Is that a Sydney thing or a Brisbane thing?
Well, no, I think it's anyone who lives west of an East Coast capital thing.
Okay, fair enough.
So those, childhoods or living in those areas can be somewhat character building.
Yeah.
And the outcomes of that is a decent level of fortitude, resilience, and determination. So I think that's a really important factor in any industry, but especially in the manufacturing industry. In terms of career background, I fundamentally identify as a scientist. I have a Bachelor of Medical Science, as well as honours and a PhD in HIV replication, which was incredibly rewarding and challenging, but also not the career for me. So I transferred from medical research into manufacturing a little over 10 years ago.
Have you found that to be like a big change, or do you find a lot of similarities in it?
That's a good question. They're not...
They wouldn't be identical, but...
No, my role doesn't exist in medical research.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have quality, we have peer review processes.
Got it.
So you're kind of your own quality person. So
Yeah.
it made sense for me when I moved in there. I'm used to actually checking on myself
Right.
and following process and things like that. And so I found the transfer easy because I started in companies that were focused on medical or science-based manufacturing. So I already had hooks to hang it on, as they say. I knew what they were manufacturing. I was really drawn to quality management. I found during my PhD that I had a different motivator to everyone else.
Yeah.
So they were happy to just tinker in the lab. That got them through between the dry spells of not incredible results. For me, it was helping people. I didn't get the same satisfaction from just being in the lab. I got satisfaction from paperwork, which is apparently quite rare.
I think so.
Yeah, I didn't know that at the time.
Especially the teachers even listening would say marking's the worst thing in the planet, and even being in an education context of university, I don't think we enjoy marking in the paperwork, but there you go, rare breed.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Fair enough.
So I found myself drawn to quality management.
Yeah.
And then more recently, having spent time in those science-related industries like cosmetics and biotech and therapeutic manufacturing, I transferred into electronics. And, you know, it might sound like my career's a little bit off track, but it was actually not a too challenging transfer into electronics. Even though I had no background, very little knowledge of electronics, can't even get the batteries in my remote the right way. So I certainly wasn't a subject matter expert, but I had the right transferable skill set from quality in those related industries to transfer into here. And relatively successful. I mean, even having no knowledge of the field, I was able to lead the team here through certification for aerospace and environmental and quality standards within a really short period of time. So.
Brilliant. So one of the main things, because we're also in season 4, which is defined as advanced manufacturing, in your context and viewpoint and the lens, what is advanced manufacturing?
That is a really good question and not a particularly simple one to answer. So, in my opinion, advanced manufacturing is twofold. So there's obviously a role for technology, like we're well embedded into 4.0 manufacturing capabilities, but I think it speaks to a certain level of business maturity. So having the technology and equipment is one thing, but being able to actually use it to at its full capacity, to create value for a customer, stretch the limits of design and sustainability and efficiency is something completely different. So an advanced manufacturer to me is a business that has its finger on the pulse of its own company, but as well as its market, its customers and future technology. And they're able to adapt easily to change because they already know their own capabilities right now and their capacity and what they can do to push those limits. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that you kind of brought in various pieces of a big picture together really well. Actually, they're like sustainability, future technologies. Those two alone are very, very big topics. So how does your context and your view lens of making sure that the quality control and the assurance components and those systems, which we'll define in a little bit, I feel like, what does that look like within advanced manufacturing? Because I feel like it's part of everyone.
Yeah, it should be embedded in everyone's process.
People don't?
No, not organically.
Fair enough.
Sometimes they need someone to remind them.
Yes.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
So the way I like to think of my particular role is that I'm employed by a manufacturing business, but I work for the end user, particularly while I'm in something like electronics or therapeutics. The most critical part of my job is to make sure that any product released is safe for the end user. That means it's not going to cause them harm, but also high quality. So they're getting what they're expecting and it meets their specifications. And quality does get a bit of a bad rap in the manufacturing industry. So I like to also define what my role is not. My role is not the police. I am not in place to make processes more difficult. And I also don't put things in place for the sake of it. What my role is intended to do is to ensure customer needs are met, act as an interpreter of standards and requirements and make sure we're meeting those specifications, make the process easier for all other departments. So they're all my internal customers here. I serve them to make sure their processes are the most efficient possible while achieving the requirements. I intend to make the business more effective, ensure value is gained from processes. We don't just tick a box here, we make sure we gain value from it. And also drive continuous improvement. We do that through the PDCA cycle, as well as Lean and Six Sigma methodologies.
So the layman's terms, what are those things, if you could elaborate a bit more?
So the way I achieve those intentions is by overseeing the implementation of what's called a quality management system. That's the framework that includes both quality assurance, or QA, and quality control, which is QC. So QA is those front-end systems in place to ensure quality. It's document control, it's change control, making sure your business analysis is done so you know your risks and
I think that's what also would probably help to then communicate to your customers.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. They rely on that. Knowing that we've done that process. Because, it's great for them to know that we can manufacture to their specification, but it matters to them how sustainable our business is and how viable our business is. They can't put all their eggs in our basket. And in fact, we're not particularly efficient or haven't addressed our own risks.
Makes sense.
And then we have QC, which are the verification activities to make sure compliance has been achieved. We embed that at all stages of manufacturing. So incoming goods are inspected. We inspect in-process work or intermediate products, as well as finished products.
Yep.
And the aim in manufacturing is to actually minimize the level of QC. So the better your processes are, the more you embed quality, the less checking you're doing.
Yeah. So you actually have to speak to pretty much every single person in the process.
That's my job. Yeah. I know every role in a business.
There you go. So how do you actually communicate? I feel like there's a high level of something that isn't really a subject matter, but I feel like it should be, is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
How do you talk to the customer? Is it a learned thing? Is it a skill that you kind of learned on the job? What did that look like?
I think that was one of the important things I picked up from my science background, is actually being able to digest information and be able to communicate that with a really diverse range of audiences. So it makes a big difference here whether I'm speaking to a client or a certifying body or a frontline user or an engineer, species of their own. So there is a lot of communication skills required, and I think sometimes they're not focused on in the quality team, and that's why where things can really fall apart if you don't have that level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And it's very tough as well, because inherently your jobs are designed to communicate. Like, one of the biggest challenges from my own learning experiences was practicing architecture, then talking to an engineer about the same building. It's a completely different ballgame. Yeah. And if you're just looking at your viewpoint, zero empathy for that other professional, it's not an easy process.
It's probably one of the biggest challenges for someone in a quality role, is actually communicating to every stakeholder, because they use the quality management system differently. They all have their own requirements of it. They all have their own language. And you just have to embed yourself in the process. It's one of the very rare roles where you have to know every process. And
I feel like you also need to be extremely detail oriented, but also very big picture as well. You almost have to zoom in and out very quickly.
Exactly. And the rapidity of how quickly you need to make that decision is a really hard skill set to get. And it's something I learned at university. It's one of the...
Okay, we might get to that, because that's, I think, one of them, always learning these kinds of pathways and job opportunities and career goals, but then knowing how the students, listeners can actually understand how to get there. That's one of the main roles, but we'll do that a little bit later. So how do you see this work being a bigger part in, when you're looking at, let's say, Queensland's manufacturing? How is it becoming more? Do you have any examples of what it might look like, where quality assurance happens in a day-to-day part? Yeah,
so it's already a really big part of manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in Queensland. We're heavily certified. So we already have standards and certifications in place and things like that. But it's a contentious point. But in my opinion, as we start to move towards Industry 5.0, I believe we'll start to see quality systems not only used for compliance, as a tool for compliance, we'll actually use it to drive company culture and collaboration within the industry. And we already have started living and breathing that at Lexon. So when it comes to driving company culture, that's we know our staff have different motivators, and they define success differently. They speak a different, language, because they're in different departments. They're focused on what they're doing. But the quality system here has something for everyone, and we make sure that it addresses everyone's needs. So we have staff that are data-driven, and the quality system has plenty of KPIs and targets to keep them happy. They know exactly where they are. I've got plenty of staff here with their graphs up. They know exactly how they're performing on the day, and it gives them a great level of satisfaction.
That's great.
We also have staff that prefer visual or tangible outcomes, and we have a quality system that promotes engagement with the end user. We get a lot of feedback from customers, whether it's good or bad. And they get their satisfaction from that.
I actually think bad feedback is probably one of the best things.
Yeah, it's harder at the time. But
exactly. But it shows actually exactly where something that's been in front of us the whole time, but we don't see it. So I think that's great.
It's really valuable because someone's taken the time to give you that feedback.
Absolutely.
That's how we use our external certification process as well. As much as it causes a little bit of stress for the staff, I love them personally. Also not a standard trait for people. I really enjoy audits.
And I think it's important it's good that I can see how you're in the work that you're doing, because you do love the parts that most people inherently don't. So that's a good thing.
You got to find your niche. I found it.
That's fair.
And so we've got something here for everyone's their goals and how they define success and things like that. But we also make sure the quality system gives everyone a voice here. So for example, when I internal audit, we directly interact with frontline staff, and we not only check for compliance, but we check in with them to say, are you happy with the process? Do you know anywhere we can improve? What are you not happy about? And it gets escalated to senior management for corrective action every time. And we also make sure that we involve a really broad range of stakeholders in our root cause analysis process. So I really dislike it when they do root cause analysis and don't involve the person who actually did the process, because they've usually got the most information.
That's fair.
So we make sure that there's a broad range of stakeholders, even external people who don't know the process, because it's great to have a big picture view of something you don't understand, and they've usually got outside the box ideas.
Absolutely, and fresh perspectives coming through.
Exactly. But it also gives people ownership of corrective action as well. If they're involved in the decision-making process and they can see what the corrective action is going to be, they'll actually own that instead of me having to implement everything.
Yeah, wow. There you go. So this is a lot of information. Like, how do you actually keep up with it?
I have a really good memory.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to train that.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think it's something I have that I've used to my advantage here.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be so memory based, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
But something it comes quite naturally to me. So it's, going into an aerospace audit next week, it's nothing for me to be able to talk about every single department here, and know what they're doing and remember corrective actions and remember exactly what's going on.
Is there a component of technology that comes into this management process on a day-to-day given?
Yeah, we have project management tools that keep us on track. So everything's recorded, and if I don't remember it, I can find it fairly easily. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, wow, there you go. So there's a lot of moving parts. And being advanced manufacturing is usually also known as a bit of a male-dominant sector. Even in going through schools, usually the woodwork, steelwork workshops, there's usually more male students going through those contexts. And then obviously not taking into factor the various types of other genders. What's your experience when it comes to females working in advanced manufacturing? You've obviously found a really unique niche, really unique skill sets. And there's a lot of, I think, exciting next generations wanting to look at it, but they usually sometimes see that context of it's a male-dominant area, so therefore it's not for me. What's your context for them and your experience?
Yeah, it's changed a lot since, science was a very male-dominated field as well when I was there. It's changed a lot. We'd certainly have a bit more of a voice, but we've got a long way to go. At Alexon, we're proud to say that we are 50-50, and that's across all departments. So our production team is 50% female. Our management team is 50-50 as well. So we don't have quotas. That's happened organically. I don't find gender a limiting factor here, but I understand that's not the case in other businesses.
Yeah.
And traditionally, women end up in the support roles for advanced manufacturers. So things like quality and procurement and marketing and things like that. And as much, I like to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with administrative roles, but those roles are not administrative. There's actually quite a lot of strategic thinking. There's a lot of complexity to it. There's a whole different skill set to what I do, to what my procurement team does, to what my marketing team does. And I don't think people understand that. They see that those female-dominated roles are just administrative, and they're really challenging, and they keep me totally challenged and satisfied. I get bored really easily, and I am sufficiently challenged here.
Yeah.
And we do end up, I have, of course, ended up in one of those traditional female roles, but I think that actually has more to do with me being a scientist than a female.
And I think it can be seen in both ways, but it's a context of we naturally have strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And they're actually very complementing if we look at it as a complementing different pieces of the puzzle forming a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it depends on, I think, the viewpoints, but what's your advice for, let's say, younger females looking onto advanced manufacturing as a pathway? Because when I speak to a lot of year 11s and 12s and even 10s, it's a mixed bag. They haven't learned what happens in the real world yet sometimes, and they haven't seen what's happened in the last, 50, 60, 70 years. What's your advice for them hearing those elements, especially a female?
But not to let it be a limiting factor. Just,
find your niche.
It's hard to say be confident when you're not there yet. But you still do need a certain level of fortitude to make your way into a male-dominated industry. But just to be, I'm not saying men are poor at or have weaknesses that we don't, but there are skill sets that we have that do really suit advanced manufacturing, like being process-driven, like being time management skills, organization skills, really good memories.
There you go.
We are really good at nagging, so that's a quality department. We've got a chief nagger here. It does actually suit those roles. And they're real careers. They're not just here to support engineers or manufacturers.
And the funny thing is you actually cannot achieve what you do. The front-facing product that comes out that everyone sees actually doesn't happen without that collaborative environment and the team and the different viewpoints, strengths and weaknesses. So that's good to see that people are identifying it and not looking at it as a barrier almost.
Yeah. And we have a lot of women in manufacturing industry events and things like that. So get yourself involved with those. We'll let you know what's here.
Absolutely. There you go. Perfect. So going back to the skill sets broader, not just the gender context. We already talked about some of the strengths and weaknesses that you kind of identified: good memory, the ability to zoom in and out, the empathetic speaking, communication skills. If we were to list almost the key soft skills, and there's a few people that don't like when I say the word soft skills, hard skills on my episodes, but for the purpose of the listeners, what are some of the key soft skills that you think are really valuable for these types of roles?
Yeah, definitely design thinking. So I think that's important for any person who works in advanced manufacturing, regardless of role, and that includes mine.
Absolutely.
So I work in an innovation company. So it underpins everything I do here. Things change every day. So you have to have that mindset. I have to be able to design processes that meet the requirements of multiple stakeholders. And to do that, I have to think systematically and with empathy, have that right mindset to get things done. Also, from my science background, systematic thinking. So my career path does seem like it's off track, but really I use my systematic problem solving from science here every single day. I, for example, run root cause analysis activities. I use DMAIC method for project management and continuous improvement projects. And I coordinate the plan, do, check, act cycle. So that is literally the scientific method. Like it's that controlled process that other departments don't so like to follow. It's ingrained in me and it comes really, really naturally. So it's one of the soft skills I rely on every day.
Was that a taught skill set in the science context?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I don't think it came organically. I certainly picked that. I mean, I did 8 years of science at university, so I picked that up. Definitely from them.
And one of the main components of design thinking from a traditional background, and obviously it can vary based on the industry, is the fact that you create almost customer personas. Now, a lot of companies do customer personas and empathy mapping, and that can be very detailed to very surface level. Do you do that for the different types of stakeholders that you have to do? And it can be I'm just purely curious.
Yeah, not in a formal manner, but probably informally. That's exactly what I'm doing.
In your head as well,
exactly.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. We'll go away and come up with prototypes for them to trial based on how they work and what they're doing.
Okay, makes sense. And what are some of the hard skills that are associated? Maybe some of the technologies that you play. You mentioned obviously software, but are there other technologies that might not necessarily be, let's say, in gear now in 2023, 2024? Do you see anything like, let's say, maybe virtual reality, augmented reality, AI? Do you think they'll come into play in your roles in future? Put you on the spot.
Possibly.
Okay.
There's a few restrictions around things like security control and things like that will delay the onset, especially in industries like therapeutic and aerospace.
Makes sense.
There's not enough control there for that to be rolled out in the very near future. But certainly incoming, there could be use for those sorts of technologies. For now, it's very human-centric.
Which is actually not a bad thing.
No, because we don't trust robots. So
there you go.
Someone's still got to check it. Someone's got to check the software. And I think when it does hit, it's going to be a real balance. So I know other companies use software systems to run their training programs and to do all their onboarding and things like that. And as much as we have the more manual process here, I think other companies lose that human touch. So they're not getting engagement and the building of culture because they've actually lost that human interaction. So I think when it does come, it needs to be balanced out.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think that's understandable. And because you are coming from the very specific viewpoint, your perception of technology is not as surface level excitement that most people tend to have, because it is usually a front end, sometimes can be a little bit gimmicky, and only in advanced manufacturing you see augmented reality being rolled out a little bit more now than, let's say, 5 years ago. So it's interesting. I simply wanted to understand your viewpoint. Now, when you're looking at the next future generations wanting to enter advanced manufacturing, maybe looking at roles of yours, what's your advice for them as a full group, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so my key advice to them is to aim for a field of interest rather than a particular job title. So it's important, I think, to find where your interests are and your motivators and go from there. So, don't just aim for an engineering role. You might just be interested in part of a manufacturing industry. And I find you'll be much happier and get a lot more job satisfaction if you actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that, my advice is it's okay to study science and not be a scientist. Don't be afraid of that. It's still a really valuable and sought after skill set. I'm still as valuable as I would be as a scientist. It hurts at the start. But it's okay for a career path to do that. It's okay to say, I don't enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I know I can confidently use my skill set elsewhere.
And I think that I just wanted to second that advice, because even going through school, I was lucky with a really good teacher, and he was my manual arts graphics teacher. But one of the first things he told me was, looking at practicing design, you should be doing physics, chemistry. He didn't say bio because it was more the built environment and I didn't really need that. But he was like, couple it with that context. And some of the best advice that I've ever received. So awesome.
And also find what you're good at. I like documentation and paperwork. And sometimes it can be your key distinguisher. Like, I did not know other people didn't like it. And now it's my full-time job. So, because I really enjoy it and I'm good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than that, if you're looking for a role in manufacturing, my advice is to get on those job websites like Seek, because you don't know if a job's out there until you see it.
Yep.
And it gives you a head start. If you find an industry or a role that's, you're interested in on a job website, already tells you what qualifications and experience they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I still do it. Don't tell my boss. Because I'm ambitious. I look 5 years ahead. I want to know what skills other people are looking for so that I can add to my repertoire and be better at my job now.
Yep.
Or, move into something else in the future. What can I be adding to my skill set to reach another industry?
Makes sense.
Also, when you're on those job websites, don't forget you don't have to meet all the criteria to apply for a job. And that's a hard thing to do. It took me a long time, but essentially my advice is to flip it around. If you're interested in a role, apply for it, and it's up to the employer to decide whether you're the person they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I like to share my experience that when I applied for the role here, they were looking for someone who was a quality manager with experience in electronics and the 3 standards they wanted to be certified to, and I ticked 0 boxes.
There you go.
It worked out okay.
Yeah.
Because I was able to communicate my skill set, and I'm just far enough outside the box to work.
And I think that's, again, a valuable piece of advice, because most people tend to think when they see something that it is a checkbox activity.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things is you might be perfect for a job on your resume because you can tick all the boxes, but if you don't have that emotional intelligence, communication, ability to learn, the resiliency, those elements, which is probably very underrated, they're the things I think that can drive a very beautiful career, personal experience as well. So I think that's great to hear. You actually got to do what you do without actually having that checkbox in the beginning.
Someone did have the awareness to put in the job ad that you're probably a scientist because we need a problem solver.
There you go.
And I'm one of the few scientists here.
Yeah.
It did work out. That was right. They're problem solvers.
Perfect.
But yeah, it worked out okay. And when I'm interviewing, it's an important thing to me to not only see that people fit the role, but fit the culture here. So if you don't get into a company, they're probably doing you a favor.
Yeah.
Advanced manufacturers, as I said, usually have a finger on the pulse of their business. They know exactly what's going to work for right now. Doesn't mean you won't fit in the future. They know what's going to upset their apple cart right now.
Yeah.
And they know what's going to fit. And if they need something outside the box, they'll go and get it.
Fair. There you go. And one of the other things of looking at the education sector, teachers, schools, guidance counselors usually don't say, you should go into quality control. It's not a pathway that people usually perceive. Do you have advice for teachers, schools listening in from that perspective?
Yeah, obviously be aware of actual careers out there. When I went through high school and university, my job, I had no idea this existed. I did study laboratory quality management at university,
yep.
And as some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, was the quality manager in that task. But even then, it didn't occur to me that was a actual career path, or something you just ended up in because you didn't succeed at something else.
Yeah.
So awareness of that. Just expose the students to what's actually out there, but also. My advice would be I'm really not in touch with tertiary education. It's been over a decade since I've been in touch with those methodologies. I don't know what's happening now. So I would say it's more important for the students to learn how to learn rather than retain specific information. So when I employ people here, I don't need them to actually know an exact set of information. I need them to know how to learn.
Yeah, and you can always teach someone who has the ability and the want to learn anything on this planet.
Yeah. And having that awareness as well is important. So when I interview, and hopefully no one's listening, my key question is, what work environment do you strive in and what do you look for in a manager? Because it tells me they've got the maturity to have done some self-assessment and say, here's how I learn, here's what I'm looking for. And if someone walks in and says, I'm a visual learner, I don't like to be micromanaged, but I like a collaborative team, I go, thank you, I can work with that.
There you go.
Otherwise,
get the formula.
Otherwise, I roll out training and I get blank stares and I've got to change it, that kind of thing. So it tells me they know how to learn. And rather than just be able to do the role straight away, they know how to find information and actually get things going.
Perfect. What's the best way to get in touch if someone wants to learn more from you? Hopefully not using your formula to ask you questions, but what if they do want to learn more? Is there any resources, or how can they get in touch with you?
So best contact for Lex Electronics is our website, or we're very active on LinkedIn. I'm also active on LinkedIn for anyone who wants to get more information or connect. I love to chat about quality, so I can talk for days without stopping. So if you start me, good luck stopping. But no, it's something I really like to talk about. And I think, part of quality is industry collaboration and shared learnings. Like there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I make sure I'm heavily networked. So when I hit a roadblock here, I go to someone else and say, how'd you do that? I'm in the same position. So happy for people to reach out.
And one random question, and I always think on the fly for this one. And because we're recording in the first week of January, I just thought, do you have any New Year's resolutions? I have been asking everyone that, like all my friends groups as well, so.
Personal ones?
It can be personal, professional, doesn't matter, anything.
Yeah, I have professional ones. Okay. So I just set my team up with their goals for 2024. And we have stretch goals.
Yeah. So
they've got their stretch goals. My goal for this year is to improve my management of them, and I'm now their mentor. So Great. So 2024 for me is mentoring my team to upskill them and make sure they're still advancing their skill set. It helps me out in the long run.
Perfect.
But get those stretch goals across the line, ease my own work burden.
There you go. So working smart, not hard. I love that. Thank you so much for your time. I feel like we could honestly talk quite more, but we've just hit our usual time slot. So thank you so much for sharing that knowledge. That was a lot of information in a short period, which is usually the most valuable for listeners. Short period of time, here's an information. Do reach out to Kylie if you have any questions on LinkedIn, like she mentioned. But otherwise, thank you so much. It's been awesome.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode. Now it's time to take action and build on the learnings to get inspired. First up, jump onto rashansenanayaka.com/podcast and check out the show notes, links, and other relevant learning materials from this amazing episode. Next, if you learned something new today, click that subscribe button and set yourself up to receive live notifications on future episodes, as well as more opportunities to learn from our amazing guests, brands, and speakers. Last but not least, it's time to have your say. Join the conversation and share your thoughts and feedback on today's episode with a review, all while joining many others with a 5-star rating for Inspiring Design with Roshan Senanayake. Till next time.